Hi, I'm Vicki Hoth from Handi Quilter, and today I want to show you how to do edge-to-edge quilting with the Pro Stitcher and actually how to advance your quilt. So let's get started on first squaring up the quilt. So the frame is very square. The Pro Stitcher is very square to it as it stitches everything, stitches right. But if I don't put my quilt on right, things are a little wonky, and so what we need to do is do a plumb line, stitch a plumb line across the quilt, and my Pro Stitcher has a horizontal channel lock, so I can stitch that plumb line, move my top fabric up to that plumb line, and then stitch that down, stitch my sides down, and we're ready to start designing the quilt and putting our design on it. So let's go up here close to the quilt and let's get that plumb line started. So I'm going to come over here to this side, to the left side, and I'm going to go to my quilt and then quilt the channel lock, and then I'm going to put on my horizontal channel lock, and now it'll only go from right to left. So from there I'll go ahead and bring up my thread, and I'm going to stitch a channel lock across the quilt. This is my guide to move my fabric, my top fabric up. And I just left my stitches per inch at the 12 stitches per inch. If you want to, you can change it to a basting stitch, but I've just left it at the 12 stitches per inch because that's what I'm going to quilt the design on. Okay, I'm finished. We'll go ahead and turn that off. Bring up my bobbin thread, clip that off. Now I want to disable my channel lock, just turn that off, and I'm actually going to bring that fabric, the edge of that fabric, right up to that channel or to that line. And if you feel confident that you can stitch this without pins, then you go right ahead. But I always like to put pins in about every 4 inches along here so that it stays stable as I stitch that. So now I'm going to go ahead and place the pins in, and I place it about an inch away from where I'm going to stitch from the top here, and then just follow that line along. So this is going to be very square to my frame. Okay, we'll go ahead and put a couple of pins over here. And the easy way to put the pin in is I like to poke it in and then raise it up, and then I can get that tip there. I'll put one more pin at the end. Okay, good to go with that. Now I'm going to come over here, and I actually don't turn my channel lock on again. I do this freehand. So, but I like to be within less than a quarter inch from the edge, because that's going to be in my binding. So to do that, I'm going to bring up my bobbin thread, going to go ahead, and then as I stitch along here, I put pressure on the back side of where the hopping foot is, and it holds that tight. You can put your finger along there if you want. Just be careful, don't stitch over your finger. That would hurt. Okay, we're just going to right along there. Some people like to do this wiggle. It's up to you, but I just do a straight stitch, and it's like 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So I don't have to worry about that flapping over as the stitching stitches the design. Adding that tension helps, and by putting my finger actually on the bed of the machine, it helps stabilize it too. Again, I've left it at 12 stitches per inch. You can change it if you want to your basting stitch. Now I'm over here, and I have my side clamps on. I put my side clamps on all 4 sides, or on both sides. So I have 4 side clamps on, and I have loaded my top. I've pinned it to my leader here because I want to be able to, when I'm quilting, to have equal tension all the way around the quilt. So I've got the tension here, This is like a great big embroidery hoop. So I've got to have tension all the way around. So I've got my tension from my top pole up here, or from my take-up pole, tension from my top pole and from my backing. So everything's going to have that nice tension, and it's going to hold the fabric so it doesn't start drying in and create an issue. So as I come down here, if you want to, you can turn on your vertical channel lock so you get a straight line down. So we could do that. And as I turn that on, I want to make sure, if my quilt is square, that it's going to be the same distance. Okay, then we're going to move over to the right or to the left side, and we're going to do the same thing over there by stitching down that side. So turn off my channel lock, moving over to this side. My side clamps are on. Everything is stable. Again, let's turn on that vertical channel lock. That's going to come down right straight. Another thing that I like to do is I actually put a little tension right here, and so that helps keep everything squared up as I come down. Okay, now equal tension around, so everything's going to stay square, and the quilting as I quilt won't draw in. So trim our threads. Always keep things neat and tidy. Keep those threads. You don't want those threads to get around your wheels. So we're going to go ahead and throw those off to the side. Now I'm going to tension this up. I actually wouldn't throw it off to the sides. I have a garbage behind me. Okay, tension. Everything is right. It's not so tight that it's like a trampoline, but because I can see the bed of the machine, but I want it tight enough so that it gives me a good stitch while I'm quilting. So I'm going to go ahead and take my pins out. You don't want to stitch over those pins. Put those back in my pin cushion. Now I have my area, and I've measured this so that I know. Before I put it on, I measured, so I know how long it is, but let's do, now with the Pro Stitcher, let's find out how wide it is, and we're going to create our area. But the first thing we want to do is bring a design in. So let's use our little capacitive stylus here. You can get these styluses at any office supply store, and they work great for this tablet. Okay, so I'm going to go to my file and open. And we want to do a continuous line. So here's our continuous line. And the first one I want to choose is the clover edge to edge. So you can either double tap on that or tap on that and open it up. And there's my design. And you'll see this is a design, and it's 9.5 by 9.5 basically square. So it's time now to create my area. So go to area. I'm going to move my machine up, and I like to do off the edge about 1 inch and right at the top here, and I'm going to press 2 corner. Then I'm going to move the machine over to this side about 1 inch off and press 2 corner again. Now if I refresh this, you can see that it's not given me a big long area, but it's given me my width, which is 43 inches. And my length of this, or the height, is actually about 45. And so I'm going to put that 45, but I'm going to add 2 more inches to it just for wiggle room for me. And I can crop at the end, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to go ahead and put 45. And now when I refresh the screen, you can see that that's the quilt. That's exactly what that fabric is there, plus 2 inches, 1 on each side and 2 at the bottom. Okay, so we're ready to go now to take this design and populate or make them all fit in the screen. So we're going to go to repeat, and with repeat I'm just going to press this fit button. Now this design is 9.5 by 9.5 square. So it's going to take that size design and populate that area, as many as will fit in that area without skewing it and stretching it out. So if I just press the fit, and there it is. Now Did it fill the area? No, it didn't. So we've got to figure out, do we want to stretch them out and make each one of these bigger, or do we want to add another repeat? So right now, it made the width 38 inches. So I think if I added one more repeat, let's go ahead and add a repeat across. Whoops, we added 2 there. Let's just do 1. It made it, so if I go back to my 4, and then to my 5, so it made it a little bit bigger. But, and so when I finally make that fit and shrink it in, it'll be more densely quilted. But let's work with that for a minute. Let's add 1 more here. So we're bigger all the way around. So if I shrink it in, it'll shrink kind of proportionate because it's not that much wider on the sides than it is on the top and the bottom. So if I go ahead and stretch my width, which means I either stretch it out or I shrink it in. So I'm just going to go ahead and press that. So it compressed it in. The same thing there, and it looks good. So the issue that I want to check is to see if I can stitch 1 row, that I've got enough throat space to stitch 1 row. So I know that the first row starts up here, and as it comes down, I've got enough space to quilt 1 row. And so it's going to be good. I like that. So I could stitch that row and be happy with that and advance it through the quilt. Now, one of the most important things, it's critical that you do this, and that is that you have to, just before you start stitching, you need to baseline. And you can see all these points, these little green dots there. If I press point to point, if they needed to be snapped together, that's what that would have done. These didn't need to be snapped together because the way the design is, they automatically snapped. But now what I need to do is I need to make it 1 full design. So I'm going to baseline this, and you'll see all of those green dots go away. Okay, now as I quilt, the quilting and using the tools that I have will allow me to stitch across and advance and reposition, and everything will go really nicely. Otherwise, if you don't baseline, you're looking for some issues, and we don't want those issues. So make sure you baseline before you quilt. Now that we've created this one, let's go into our library and see some of the other designs that we can create and some of the other tools that we can use for edge-to-edge quilting. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to File. I'm going to close that design out. So now I just have the area, and I'm going to open up. Okay, we'll open that up. There we go. I want to bring in like the Baptist fan, okay? Again, I can double click, or I can click that and then open it. So there's my Baptist fan, and it is 10 inches wide, about 10 3/4 inch wide, and 8 inches high. So remember that as we go to our repeat and fit. All right, now you can see that they didn't snap together because they need to overlap. Each design needs to overlap into the previous design. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and hit my point to point. And now they snap together, and I can see that I need to add more repeats across. So I can go ahead and add another one, and I think I'll add 1 more. So they're a little bit too big, but that's okay. And I'm actually going to add 1 on my vertical. So we're a little large, and from there I can go ahead and do my stretch width and stretch height. But before I do that, I actually want to zoom in on this, and I'm going to press my follow and just move my machine up here. So I'm going to press follow, and then I'm going to zoom in, and my zoom is going to follow where my crosshair is. And I want you to see the distance. You can see here the distance between these two is not the same distance as here, and I want it to be. So I need to take and change the distance and make it a negative, because those designs, the rows have to go up into the negative. So I'm going to go here, and I think I'll type in a negative 0.75. Okay, that's snapped together, and to me that's a little too close because it's closer than this. So maybe we'll go ahead and type in a negative 0.65 and see how that looks. That looks better. As you see along there, they all look the same. And that's what we're looking for, is for those to have the same distance all the way around. So that was a -6.5. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my follow and refresh. Sometimes follow and refresh don't play nice together, so you have to turn the follow off to use your refresh. Okay, now let's talk about this. I can see that I'm too big. So if I do my stretch width, it shrunk it in. Now it actually made the designs smaller, each one, and I'm going to go ahead and stretch height. Okay, that looks good, except I have all of these blank areas on both sides and a little at the bottom. So I need to go to my wrapping tool, which is in my repeat. And with this tool, I want to use the windows. I'm working with this whole window, and I want to use the window functions right here and the window functions here. I don't want it to do anything with the row functions or the column functions. So it's all to do with the window. So I want to wrap this. So I want to fill in this side, then I want it to go around to the other side and fill in that side. So if I press an arrow key, either the forward or the backward, or if I press the half, it will fill that in. So I'm just going to go ahead and press the forward key, and voila, it filled it in. That is so cool. Okay, now I have some problems here because I can see a little gap on the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and press the arrow key and press it down or up, depends. This is the thing that you get to choose, and you can see all of these little, it like crops it, and it's an open crop, and I don't want an open crop, so I'm going to close that off. Now as I move this, I want to close it so I can get rid of there. I like that, but I have a little bit on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and move that over to the right until I only have one stop and start on that side. So I'm just continuing on, it's reprocessing there, so I just keep moving until, and so you're seeing that all four sides are being cropped. So then the quilt, okay, probably one or two more there. Now I don't have any, only that one stop, and then it will jump over, and it's ready to go, except I do need to baseline it. So I need to get rid of all those black dots, and they're snapped together because they're black, so I know that. And baseline. Now I'm ready to quilt again. Now we have one more tool that I want to show you so that you can see how all of these tools in repeat work. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to File and close this one out. No, I don't want to save that design. Go into my file and open it up. Needs just a little nudge there. And I want to bring in one of my clamshells. So we'll just go ahead and bring in maybe that clamshell with a curl and open that up. Okay, this is a 6 inches wide by 3 inches high. And so when I go to repeat, and everything's grayed out. Why is everything grayed out? Because I'm in the wrapping and I need to go to the main. Okay, now I have tools that are available. I'm going to go ahead and fit. And it almost fit perfect. So I'm just going to go ahead and stretch my width so it shrinks it in, stretch my height to make sure everything's right. But the issue with this design is clamshells are supposed to offset. So I have a tool for that. We're going to go to wrapping, and with the wrapping, now we're going to use the row function. So these are the buttons here that work with the row function. Okay, and so I know that with clamshells they need to be offset like 50%, so a half of a clamshell over. So there's a half button for that. So if I press that half button, it automatically just offset them, and it's good to go. We're ready to quilt this one out. Are we? No, we need to do one more thing. We need to baseline. Okay, we're ready to stitch, but I want to actually go back to our first design that we did, the clover design, and stitch that one out. So I'm going to go back to my history, and I could actually do undo all the way back, but I'm going to go back to my history and find that, clear back to where we were, right to baseline. That should be the one that I'm looking for. There it is. And we can now just go ahead and close that. It's ready to stitch. So now let's stitch it out, and I'll show you how we advance the quilt after we finish our row. So we're ready to go. Let's go to quilt and to run. But before we do run, I want to make sure in my settings that I have all my settings set. So the first thing I want to do is check my speed, and I always start at medium speed. I never start at fast because I never know how things are going to go, so I always put it at a medium speed. The next thing I want to do, my auto jump, I have it at 6. That's fine because it will stop after, it won't jump any further than 6 inches, and I know that this quilt is 43 and 43 wide, and so it will always pause and wait for me to clip my threads. The next thing is stitches per inch, and I have it set at 12, and I like that. I'm good with that. In my tie-offs, I want my tie-off start to be on, my tie-off end, and I actually like the micro quilting, or the micro tie-off. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that, and there's 2, so I'm going to change the tie-offs to be 4 for the micro. And then my next one is my pull-up. I'm going to do just a pull-up on. If I do the pull-up auto, it will actually move the machine when it does that pull-up stitch, and I'm going to show you how to do it without that on. So, and then my pause delay, I have that turned off. You can turn it on. That'll pause after a couple of seconds and wait for you to clip your threads. But because my start point is outside of the quilting area, I'm not going to worry about that. And I think I'm ready to go. So let's go back to quilt. And the machine knows where to go, but I like to kind of put it in the area here, because if I have some seams that are a little heavy, then it doesn't have a problem going over those. So I kind of put it in the area, and it'll find its place. So we're ready to go. We're ready to quilt. So there's my settings box, and I know I went through and set all of that, so I know we're okay. My needle is in the up position, and we're ready to start stitching. It's going to move over to that start point, take a pull-up stitch. Now, a couple of things I can do. Right down here, so you can see this real close, I can actually take my thread here, and I can swish it under here, and it gives me my bobbin thread. So I've got now both of those together, and I'm going to hold those, so as it starts doing the tie-off, I've got a good hold on it. Then I'm going to press resume, and now it's going to start doing the tie-off. It'll do those 4 stitches, and it always stitches the tie-off in the direction that it's going to start stitching, so you kind of know where to avoid holding your thread. And I have my side clamps on, so this is at a medium speed. Now I can go ahead and clip that thread. So I've got my tension set. If you have an issue with the tension, you can adjust that tension on the go, or if you need to pause, you can go ahead and press your pause. But I've got my tension set good, and we're going to go ahead and let that quilt this whole row out. I never walk away when I'm right on the edge here, because you never know with your batting what it's going to do. So I stay right there on the edge. Keep my scissors out of the way. Usually I wear my scissors. Gonna hold that batting so we don't have any issues. And now we're good to go, and now it's just going to go ahead and stitch through the rest of the quilt with this row. We're coming up to the last part of the design now, and we want to make sure as we are on this side that we're staying here watching this so it doesn't grab our batting wrong. So now we're going to go ahead, it's going to finish this, and as it comes to the end, it will pause, it will do the tie off, and it's going in the direction the way it was stitching. Now it tells me on the screen that I have a long jump pause and I need to trim my thread, so it disabled my motors. I can move that aside, clip my thread, now we need to advance the fabric and realign it. So let me show you a really, really cool trick. You'll love this, and this is probably the way you'll I hope this is the way you'll do it forever, because it is so simple. It is so simple. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just get rid of that box. I'm going to come over here on my fabric, so let's look down on the fabric, and I'm going to just find a point. So here's a point kind of in the center of my quilt. I'm going to move my needle over, and I'm going to drop my needle down in that point. Okay? So I've latched onto the fabric. Now what I want the computer to do is I want it to latch onto the design. So I'm going to go to drag, and where my crosshair is, it's going to latch onto that design, which is the same point on the design as it is on the fabric. So I'll press drag, and now I'm going to release my side clamps. And my motors are not enabled because I moved it over there. Release the side clamps. And then I'm going to go ahead and advance the quilt. Now to advance the quilt, sometimes you might need to give it a little coax, but where we're just getting started with this, and we have some thread there we need to get out of the way. We're going to advance this, and I'm not releasing this ratchet, I'm releasing these two, because the ratchet that or the pull that I'm pulling it to, you want that in place. So I'm going to go ahead, and as you see, as I move the fabric, the design is being moved on the screen. The crosshair has a hold of that, and I'm just moving that forward till I have enough throat space again. Go ahead, drop your ratchets down, tension that up a little bit, put your side clamps on. So go ahead, put that side clamp onto the backing, straighten the batting, and if you need to, you can actually raise this pole up. Let's raise that up and check your batting. You see I have a little tuck there. So I can come back over here and pull that out. Check that again. That looks a lot better. Put that back down in, put the ratchet down. Come over here, have some stray thread we need to get rid of. Put my side clamps on. Make sure everything is perfect. Now, the one thing I see here, if you'll look down here real close, right down here, you can see that there's a little bit of a tug on my fabric. So I want to straighten that out. I don't want any tugs on that. I want that to be smooth along there, that needle. Okay, so I still have a hold of it. The crosshair is still latched on. I drug that up, and you can see the bottom of the screen here that it moved that up in my area. Okay, now I'm ready to let go of it. The first thing I'm going to let go of is I'm going to press the drop, or to get my stylus here, press the drop, and it's going to let go of it. It's going to drop it. Whoops, press that twice there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is drop the fabric. So I'm going to raise the needle and so everything's in position. When I advance the quilt, I advance the design with it, so they stayed together. Now I need to stitch down the sides of my quilt. So I'm going to come over here. We need to get rid of that thread, throw it in the garbage. And I'm just going to go ahead and stitch that down. Clip my threads. Find my scissors that kind of snuck under that quilt. That's why you should wear them or put them. I actually put a clip here and They're always there. But I didn't get it on my machine today. Okay, I'm going to come over here, do the same thing, bring up my bobbin thread. One thing that I have found that's really important is when after I'm done stitching this down, that I always clip my threads. I don't leave them hanging, so that I keep everything, the area clean. Stitch down there, down, bring up my bobbin thread, and then I clip that down against the fabric. Come back here and I clip this thread. Throw this in my trash so that everything stays clean. Now, just before I start quilting, I want to make sure that everything is lined up. So I can come over here and I can check, and we're going to do a refresh here so we can see this. And I want to press my follow, and I'm going to zoom in on this and make sure that everything did line up. So then my next row, and it's following my zoom, that's where it's going to stitch. Let's come over here, make sure everything lined up. Everything is perfect there. And so you can just kind of follow along your quilt and make sure that everything lines up, because if something kind of went a little wonky, then you can actually do some adjusting or some adjusting here to kind of line that back up, okay? So, but I'm happy with that. So I'm going to turn off my follow and refresh that so I can see the full view of it. Okay, we're ready to quilt almost. What we need to do is go to quilt, and I need to move my green bullet down to the next row that I want to quilt, because if I didn't and I pressed resume, the machine would want to go back up over there, and that's not where I want to be. I want to be over here. So I'm going to go to new start end, and I'm going to use the start point because that's what I want to move, and I'm going to use the jumps. So the start point, all these tools right here have to do with the start point. So if I press that forward arrow, it moves that green jump forward. So watch that as I move that, and it moved it to the next row. I'm ready to stitch. So I'm going to go ahead again. I move my machine over here close to the area, and I am going to actually come over here and just bring up my bobbin thread, because on this resume right now it's not bringing up the bobbin thread and it doesn't do a tie off. I'm outside of the quilt. I don't care if it does a tie off, but I really like to bring up my bobbin thread. It makes it easier and cleaner. So now I can go ahead and press resume, and it's going to move over there and it's going to just start stitching. And now we're ready to do our second row. Holding my batting, making sure that it's going to be okay. And then I'll go ahead and trim my threads. Now we're in our second row. After this finishes, if you need to, rewind this so that you can see how to advance it again, and just continue on row after row until you get to the bottom of your quilt. I've stitched every row except for my last row, and I have to leave for the day, and so I need to save my design, turn off my machine, and then tomorrow I have to figure out how to realign everything. So I want to show you that right now. The first thing, which is really very important, especially if you have a really large quilt, is to save this whole layout. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the emergency stop, going back to design, to file, and I'm going to save. So there's my save button. I'm going to save this, and since it's in continuous line, this is where I found that design. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in there, and it has already said repeat clover edge to edge. If I just put clover edge to edge, it would overwrite this over the top of my original design. We don't want to do that. We want to make a new name, and it already has, it says repeat, and so I'll go ahead and let it be that new name. Or I can change. If I want to put a new name, I can just go ahead and type in there and say, let's see, let's move our cursor. Let's delete that and put my cursor at the end here. See if we can get that to move to the end. There, we'll just put it there. And we could put, maybe it's the name of a quilt. Maybe it's Sarah's quilt. So I could type in S-A-R-A-H. Just that. Oh, it didn't spell it right, but that's okay. At least I know that I've got that. And so it's whatever that name is there, I've got it. If I want to get rid of that, I can go ahead and just X that out and it will delete those. And if I, just keep tapping that, and you can see what I've done here. I'm going to actually put a real name on here, and it's move the cursor over so that we'll get that to tap. Or just put Sarah. We'll just put Sarah. S-A-R-A-H. And that's good enough that I know it has a new name other than that clover edge to edge. And now, important, press save. Okay, go ahead and close out my keyboard. Let's make sure we did that. Let's go ahead and open that up. And it's in the S's, so we'll move down here. And there it is, Sarah HQF. So it's there, ready for me to come back to. Now, if I want to come back the next day and open this up, and so I'm just going to actually close everything, close that design out. I won't have my area because I've closed my machine down, so I'll go ahead and close that area down. I don't need the area now because I just need to align it back to my quilt. So let's go find the pattern. Go to File. Two ways I can find it. I could go to Recent, and there it is there, or I could open up my folder and find it there. But I can, with Recent, that was the last design I used, so I might as well just go there and bring it up. Okay? But notice where my crosshair is. That's where my needle is. Notice where if I move this around, it's not necessarily positioned correctly. So I need to take, each one of these rows are the same. I need to take a row and position it, and the easiest way is to find my start point of the previous row that I quilted. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here to my start point. So I'm going to come right down here, right at the start point. I could find another point, but we'll do the start point here. And then go to reposition. And if I press the start point, it's going to take this design. Let's go ahead and press that so that it actually does it. And it takes the start point of the design and places it here. I've repositioned so that that very first row is positioned with this row. But you say, wait a minute, I want to stitch that last row. Well, let's go down and move it down. So we're going to move this down, and we're actually, this row is not my last row, so I want to go one row before. So this is the row that I want to be at, because the last row is right here, and we'll move down there in a minute. So I'm going to go back to design, reposition from that start point, and now we've lined it up as if we were just continuing on quilting the quilt. But I don't have enough space. I don't have enough fabric for the pattern that's there. So let's advance the quilt and let's do a crop. We're ready. I'm going to put the needle down in the fabric, drop that needle down to the point there, and then I'm going to press my drag. And now I can go ahead and release the clamps, and then we'll advance that quilt. And as we advance it, the quilt will roll forward and the design will roll forward up on the screen. So we're good. We're going to go ahead and put our side clamps back on both sides. And with this quilt, my back is actually smaller than my front, so that's a bad thing, unless it's just regular fabric like I've got here. Normally your back would always be larger, but so I've got to crop above my leader because I don't want to stitch over that leader. All right, and I can, whoops, before we do anything, we need to drop the design. So I've got it set right. Go ahead, press the drop button, and it dropped it. Now raise my needle, and it's in position. I can do a spot check to make sure that everything advanced correctly, and then I can go ahead and stitch down the sides here, but I can only stitch this far down. I need to crop this design because this is as far as I can go on my design. As I go across here, I can feel my pins all the way across, and so I've got to crop at about that point. So I need to create an area to crop, because crop is based on giving it an area, knowing what to crop out. So we'll go ahead and come back over here, off the edge of the quilt and off the edge of the design on the screen. Go to my crop function. Whoops, we don't want to go to crop yet. We need to create an area. Okay, let's go to my area function, and I want to create an area with a 2-corner. Okay, so my first point is right here, outside of the design, outside of the quilt. Then I'm going to come over to this side and move down just a little bit, off the edge, outside of the edge of the design, and press 2-corner again. Now right now it's created this long, little, narrow channel there, and it doesn't totally take in all of that lower design. I need it to. So I'm just going to override this height with, say, 5 inches. Now it made it big enough so that every bit of that part that I can't stitch is in there. Now we can go ahead and go to crop. And we want to take everything from the inside and crop it away. So I'm going to use my inside, and there it's gone. But I have all these little jumps, so I want to close that. And now it makes a straight line. I'm going to turn off the box so you can see, and we'll just zoom in on this so you can totally see that, how it just does a stitching line as it crops along there so that it can get to the next path. And that's as easy as it is to crop. Now we've gone through everything you need to know about how to do the edge to edge, setting it up, stitching it out, advancing it forward, and cropping at the end. Let's get started quilting and let's have fun.